Welcome to the Career Wanderlust podcast, your compass for new career horizons. Today, we are talking with Mark Beal. For nearly 30 years, Mark Beal has served as public relations practitioner and marketer for one of the nation's leading consumer public relations agencies, developing and executing marketing and public relations campaigns for leading companies and brands such as the Olympic Games, Super Bowl, World Series, US Open tennis, and the Rolling Stones. Amazing. Today, Mark collaborates with Gen Z as a full time professor of practice communication in Rutgers University School of Communications and Information. It was Mark Rutgers students who inspired him to author his first book in 2017, 101 Lessons They Never Taught You in College, which provides tips to college students preparing for their transition to a career. Media and readers nationwide responded so positively to the book that Mark authored 101 Lessons They Never Taught You in High School About Going to College, which was published in 2018. Now, Mark didn't stop there. Mark's book, Decoding Gen Z 101 Lessons Generation Z Will Teach Corporate America, Marketers and Media, was published in 2018. This also captured the attention of media, marketers, and employees nationwide as Gen Zers were starting to become a focus for those corporations and brands in 2020. Mark then co authored Engaging Gen Z with Harvard University student Michael Pankowski. Then in 2022, Mark authored Gen Z Graduates to Adulthood, and his latest book, Z.E.O, was published in 2023 as more Gen Zers have transitioned from college to their career. Now, the Gen Z books have led to invitations from conferences, corporations, brands, agencies, universities, industry associations, and pro sports leagues and teams for Mark to deliver keynote speeches featuring his Gen Z insights. Now, Mark is he's also co-authored Career and Transition and Win the Job and Thrive in a Multi-Generational Workplace in 2024. Truly amazing. And I'm really excited to learn more about this, Mark. Thank you for joining us on the Career Wanderlust podcast.
Jolie, thanks for having me. I think this is great. I love the content of your podcast. I love the value it delivers to all those who listen to it and view it. And I watched a bunch of episodes, and I'm excited to be here.
Oh, I am too. I mean, really, you have excelled in your career. And the fact that you had this amazing career on the agency side, now you're taking everything you've learned, you're teaching those students at Rutgers University. I love how you're passing on that knowledge and information and then writing all of these books. I mean, this is no small feat. So there's so many different questions I can ask, but I'd love to know, is there anything that's helped carry you through all of these different transitions, or have you found that there's been specific advice that's helped you at different times throughout your career?
I think along the way, there's different advice that's been more relevant along the way. But I think if I look at, again, 30 plus years, first in the agency side, now at Rutgers University, the idea of just never stop learning, right? We all every day want to evolve and transform and grow. And right. Once we stop learning, we're kind of going backward, right? So that kind of,
Completely agree.
so whether you're entry level or you're 30 years in or you're a new professor like I was a few years ago who started at Rutgers, you always want to, again, never stop learning. There's always, learn, evolve, grow, transform, all those kinds of things. So I think that's one that kind of covers the entire, my entire career. But I've had, each semester I bring in about 50 or so guest speakers. So these are leaders in advertising, marketing, public relations to all my courses. Each semester about 50. And so lately, each one always shares their advice right at the end of their presentation. So we hear things like, never stop networking, which completely agree with that as well. Completely
Yes.
great. Your network is your net worth. You're that a lot as well from a lot of folks too.
Yeah.
But one that I've been using a lot, actually using a lot, sharing a lot lately is from one of my favorite original series, Ted Lasso. And there's a famous Ted Lasso scene where he's challenged to a game of darts by the billionaire owner of the football team, the soccer team. And he plays him in darts and Ted's about to win at the end. And he turns to him and he said, if you were curious, you would have asked questions. You would have asked like, Ted, have you ever played darts before? And of course, Ted responds, yes, ever since I was, 7 or 8 years old. So I always love the idea of consistently be curious and ask questions. And I say that to my students all the time, but all of us, right? So whether that's a guest speaker comes into the classroom, like take advantage of that person being in your classroom.
Mhm.
If everyone else leaves, go up to them and shake their hand and ask questions. Or, even at social settings, a family barbecue, some social thing. Well, there's someone, well, probably more than one, but there's someone in that room who be great to meet, great to learn more about, great connect, great to network, all those kinds of things. So consistently be curious and ask questions no matter what stage of your career you're in. Because I always say the answers to those questions open doors to potentially new opportunities. And so that's one that I've been sharing a lot with my students lately. Consistently be curious and ask questions.
Absolutely. And it's the best advice to be successful with networking, right? I mean, that's how you're able to talk to other people is just being curious. Like especially for people who are introverted or have difficulty doing this. It's stop worrying about what you're going to say and just get curious about the person. I mean, you just start asking questions.
You know this. We both know this, man. People
Yeah.
love talking about this. So
They do.
you ask these questions. It's not like no one wants the answer. They want to share. They want to give. They want to share their career and their success and just their human interest side of things. I start every class or every semester. I start each class. It's pretty simple with my students. I just say, "Hey, share your passions. What do you love? And then I always say, what kind of experience do you have across, media, marketing, all those kinds of things? And if I never ask those questions on the first day of class, and I continue to ask them throughout the semester, but like right now I've got, a senior, one of my seniors, she writes for Sports Illustrated. To me, that's pretty darn impressive. She's way for sport. She covers the New York Giants for Sports Illustrated. She's a senior advisor. Well, she may not think that's impressive. I think it's pretty impressive, but more equally important, like that's something if I don't ask, I don't know. I've got another student who's a junior, who's a recording artist, has an agent. He's a singer-songwriter, and every Thursday or so, he gets on a plane, flies to this past weekend. He was in Gainesville, and he's performing concerts, and he's back in class on Monday morning. I mean, again, if you don't ask, you don't know. But we all have stories, we all have interesting backgrounds, and it's fascinating to learn and then figure out, okay, how can we collaborate together? What can we do together?
That's fascinating. I love it. And I love that you're bringing in all those guest speakers for your students to learn from all of these experts. I mean, that's incredibly invaluable and sets them up for that continuous learning. Because don't you agree that, I mean, the continuous learning, that's what keeps us young, right? That's what keeps us youthful. I mean,
Oh,
the youth of spirit, if you will. I'm curious, what do you do for yourself to keep learning?
well, dating back to my days in university, I'm what we call a media junkie. I mean, I consume media all the time. I'm reading, I'm watching TED Talks. I'm on a daily basis reading a dozen or more newsletters across marketing, advertising, sports business, sponsorship, you name it. So I take all that in. What I do actually in all my courses, which is interesting, we just did this was it just yesterday. We spent about the first 20 minutes going through what I call real-time real world marketing. Now, again, I'm teaching primarily some software for mostly juniors, seniors, and grad students in, public relations and marketing courses. So what I was sharing is real-time news in, marketing, public relations, advertising. So yesterday, for example, we talked about the fact that Netflix for the first time ever will broadcast 2 NFL games this Christmas Day. But the big announcement of the weekend was that Beyonce is going to perform at one of those games. So I bring that into the classroom, one, because we should have our ear to the ground on what's just happening in culture, pop culture, society, news, and information, especially if you're any kind of marketing communication. So you should, so I want to bring that in the classroom to, again, be aware of this. And then equally important, what are your thoughts on this? What's your reaction to this? And so I want to listen and hear what they have to say about this news, this campaign. So a real good example, one of the other news items yesterday was that Coca-Cola is using AI, excuse me, to produce their latest holiday television ad. Well, I didn't know what the reaction would be, but we probably spent easily 10 minutes on the students, critically analyzing it and talking about the pros and cons, probably more cons than pros. So the point of
What was
the
that?
robust discussion that the students are really into. But again, if you don't bring that to them in the classroom and don't even open up a dialogue, there's no chance to have that conversation.
Yeah. I'm curious, what was their analysis of it? What did they think of it?
Well, their analysis, was really fascinating. I mean, we could have probably spent the hour and 20 minutes just on that one topic. The thought was, Christmas, well, we'll call it holiday time. Holiday time, right? It's supposed to be family and warm and getting together and all those things. And for years, Coca-Cola did that incredibly well with their kind of iconic advertising.
Mhm.
But using AI for the 2024 ad, it's much more hecky. It doesn't feel like the human heartbeat. And so they were incredibly critical of it. And as I brought up articles and stories, there's a lot of criticism around it. So they were forming that opinion on their own, but it was interesting because it aligned with a lot of the criticism right now about, they've kind of taken the heart or the warm fuzzy out of the holiday season to
Yeah.
for AI. But the students, there's a right time for AI. There's but maybe not for this particular, holiday advertising that they again are known so well for over the years. This just didn't hit the mark.
I agree. I that's what I'm finding. I mean, AI is amazing, and there's so much you can do with it, but there is the humans have to put the soul into it, if you will. And if it's all AI, that soul, that heart, like you're saying, it's lacking. There's just it's not super obvious right away, but it's when you experience the whole thing together that you can just really feel it. So
Oh, no,
I think that's right.
I love what you said there. I'm smiling and nodding as you go through. So I've spoken at several conferences where I knew the agenda was heavy AI, and nothing wrong with that, right? But I knew the speakers coming up were heavy AI, and maybe I was the first speaker, and so I said, "You're going to hear a lot about AI today, but we can't forget about one other thing: HI, human interaction. It doesn't matter how advanced we get, how tech we get, how innovative we get. There's still human interaction, right? When you go for a job interview, ultimately, you're going to probably be interviewed by humans, right? The first interview may not be, well, first, not free. But once you're going to actually have to, be interviewed by other humans. And so I said that don't forget the importance of this thing called what I call HI, human interaction.
Yes, I completely agree. I completely agree. This is really interesting. Now, I can only imagine how many stories you have in your career. And I'm wondering if you could share with us one or two, whatever you feel comfortable with, but something that was impactful that happened to you in your own career that other people could benefit from hearing about.
Oh, absolutely. I will share a story. Well, name names, so I'll share a story. Early on in my career, probably 2 or 3 years into my career, again, on the agency side in public relations and marketing, I was honored that, the CEO and other leaders of the organization invited me to join them for a new business pitch. Never been on a new business pitch. My role was probably just to carry everyone's badge, but they invited me. I thought, it's great, And yeah, they were leading the charge. I was there probably just more as the young executive and had a big part in it. But I'd never been on a new business pitch where we were going to compete against other agencies and one agency would win the business based on, right? So we made the trip to Florida and we presented to a CEO, CMO of a company that was kind of a recreational sports company. And before we even sat down, or as we sat down, I forget it was the CEO who turned to us and just basically said, "So did you test drive the product?" And the honest answer was, "No, we didn't." Again, he said, "Well, you can leave now." Boom. So,
No.
this was something that
Oh, no.
preparing for 2, 3 weeks. And again, this was the first time I'd ever experienced this. Well, that turned into be probably one of the most valuable lessons in my career ever.
Right.
Because eventually I led the new business efforts for our agency for over 20 years.
Mhm.
And that was that lesson. I never made that mistake. And so what I always went overboard was research, 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 research. And so if we were going to pitch a fast food restaurant chain, we, meaning me and the team, we would go almost live in that fast food restaurant chain for 2 or 3 weeks, every day, every other day, on weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and live it, learn it, get to know the customers, know everything. So we went to
Really
that
smart.
pitch. No other agency would have more information and knowledge or experience. And we would even perhaps know as much as the executives who work there day to day. And so whether it's fast food, automotive, you name it, the approach was research will win this. We will win based on the research we conduct. And the research isn't just simply Googling things. In this case, it's going out and test driving. And when I say test driving, again, trying, drinking, eating, driving, whatever the product or service was. And that proved to be a key element to success what throughout the 2000s, 2010, 2015. But I go back to that first ever, pitch that I was invited to, and we didn't test drive. And that was a major mistake. And I said, never again, never again will we walk into it. In fact, not only will we test drive, we will have done so much research about the company, the brand, the consumer, everything that, again, we will win this. And so very valuable. And I always draw a parallel between pitching new business. Just about every business you're in, you're pitching or getting new business, whatever business you're in. But I do equate it to attempting to win the job, because ultimately, when you apply for that job and when you interview for that job, you are competing against 10, 15, 20, whatever the pool is. And ultimately, they're selecting one, maybe two, but one who beats everybody else out. One person wins that job. And so, not to plug, but in winning a job and thriving in a multi-generational workplace, a key part of this is research, 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 research. the company, the competition, those who are going to interview, know where they went to school, know where they've worked, know everything about them. Listen to, in fact, I love that we're doing this. I always tell my students, somewhere, somehow, they've conducted a podcast somewhere or some interview. Listen to that podcast, pull a quote or two from that podcast, because I bet you the only candidate they'll interview who actually went to that extent, but that is what will get you noticed. That is what will get you
100%.
noticed. So anyway, I draw a big parallel between competing for business and competing for the job.
Such good advice, and that's great advice for interviewing too. I mean, that's
Absolutely.
great advice for so many different things.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you realize this, but that's actually what Pixar did, at least in the earlier days. I don't know if they still do that, but when they first started, so Ratatouille, everyone went to France. Cars, they all drove Route 66 or what
Oh
have you.
yeah.
So fully immersive. I think
Yeah.
it's brilliant. And I love that difficult situation, that story that could have been a down, if you will, in someone's story was actually because this is the beauty, right? When we take the time to learn from our mistakes and we just eh, any kind of mistake or failure can actually be the launching pad for our greatest success if we just take the time to
Oh yeah.
learn from the experience of it.
Well, I can bring it full circle to your point. We'll say 20 years later, that same company under new leadership, under new CEOs and the new CMOs reached out to us because they weren't aware of,
Uh-huh.
what we had done 20 years
Yeah.
ago.
Okay. I love this.
And they invited us to compete with about 20 agencies for a new product they were putting out on the road. And by then we had already immersed ourselves in this research with other brands. And so we went in and won that. It wasn't even close. It wasn't
That's
even
amazing.
close. And, we
That's
all
great.
learn.
Oh yeah.
We all have failures. We all have lessons. We can learn and apply those to, the next opportunity.
Yeah, I agree that research is like it's one of those things that float to the top. Are there any other key lessons for people who are dealing with new business development? Because I know, look, there's a lot of people who have moved into those roles, right?
Mhm.
Who it's new to. Is there any other key things that float to the top when it's dealing with new business that you
Yeah,
could share?
to me, it's, I always say, and I just had a lecture about this last week in my class to my students. There's two ways to approach new business. One is reactive, which is wait for the phone to ring, wait for someone to say, "Hey, we want to work with you," and that's not the approach. The other is strategic prospecting. And so, what we did, and what I tell my students, and it's a favorite approach I tell them as they're starting to look for jobs if they're graduating either December or next phase, research and identify kind of your 20 top prospects. Companies I want to work for, or in the new business case, companies where we have experience that will be relevant, and start to strategically prospect those, meaning who knows who on the inside? How can I get a informational or a cup of coffee interview? How can I start to make my way in there? From a new business perspective, again, I won't name names, but a large global company that we all know was one of those 20 I had on the list. And I said, why are we working with this company? We have experience that would be relevant. And through, again, things like phone calls and leveraging your network, which we could talk about for a long time too, leveraging your connections. So it's, yeah, there's someone at their headquarters who basically is in procurement that manages the agency relationships. That's the person. That person's the gatekeeper. You need to get to that person. So I did reach out to that person, called or emailed them at the time and said, I understand you're the, procurement gatekeeper for PR agencies and others. Yes, I am. We would love to get on a future RFP. Well, I don't know anything about you, but if you're going to be in my market soon, I would take a meeting to learn about you. I think, well, I'll be there next week. Of course, I wasn't planning on being there next week, but we'll be there next week. Got in there, got the meeting. I guess impressed them enough. They invited us to an RFP within a week or two. We won it. They invited us to another one. We won it. So the point was, though, we strategically identified that company as a prospect, and then we worked channels on, okay, who on the inside who do we have to get? There's somebody. There may be two or three, but there's somebody. And so I think it's they with Dotson. Identify companies
It
that
is.
you want to work, right? Whether those are
Mhm.
corporations, nonprofit, agencies, it doesn't matter what it is. And then it's, okay, who knows who there, right? And there's some logical ways to start that. Could be just, alumni of the same school where you attend, things like that.
Yeah, 100%. I just gave a talk on this last night myself. The strategy that you're saying, it's what I call the long game strategy, right? It's
Keeps
the identifying what your ideals are and making those connections, regardless if there's an opening, regardless if they're hiring, but letting them know, hey, this is where I would love to work. I would love to work with you. Here's why. Here's the value I can bring, and then keep connecting and try
I
to make
think
this work.
it's very good. I love that you call it that. I always say you're either a hunter or a farmer. I'm a farmer. I want to plant those seeds. I want to grow those seeds. I want to grow those relationships. Not that the hunter doesn't periodically, I guess, win. But the former is building relationships that aren't just about getting the business. It's about building relationships that hopefully will be mutually beneficial for many, many years to come. So
Exactly.
I agree. That ties into that kind of long game approach.
Yep. So tell me more about challenges because we all face challenges in our positions. I'm curious, what's a big challenge that you faced? How did you overcome it?
Well, I think that, to your point, first is nothing is linear anymore. There are going to be on ramps, there are going to be off ramps, there's going to be obstacles, there's going to be challenges, there's going to be step back, So it's not like we're all in this path and we're on the super highway. It's too fast, right? So I think first is just the mindset and embrace the idea that there are going to be challenges, there are going to be obstacles, there's going to be bad days, whether that's in the job search, whether that's while you're actually in the job. There's going to be, not everything is moving full speed ahead and all is great. So I think part is just the mindset of there are challenges, embrace the challenge as opposed to, I don't want to deal with the challenge. I can't handle the challenge. Like embrace it. I would say, again, 30 years in the agency side, and I kind of say this half kiddingly, but clients are never satisfied. So there's always a challenge with clients as far as just, they're always looking, and I think that it's what drives most of us in that business is they always are looking for what's next, what's better, what's more, right? And so that's a challenge. You've got to embrace that of, hey, clients never satisfied. What can we deliver next to them? How can we do better for them? And so that's a challenge that you could look at it in two ways. Like, I can't stand this client, or you could go, okay, they're pushing us. Let's see if we can respond. Let's see how we can dial it up. Let's see how we can be smarter, more strategic, more creative, all those things. So that to me was like a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly thing with clients because you are under a lot of pressure to deliver and then deliver more and then deliver more.
Yeah. Well, it's a winning mindset to have that. It's flipping the script on it, right? Instead of being like, okay, this is a challenge that I can't, like you said, I can't deal with this. I don't want okay, well, how can I make this how can I use this to make me better? Or, how can I use this situation to make it the best thing that happened to me?
Absolutely. So I think it's the mind, right? The mindset just challenges. We're going to have challenges now and forever, personally, professionally, you name it. But instead of running away, just immerse yourself in it, and come out the other side smarter, stronger, better for it.
Yeah, yeah. It really is. It makes me realize it's that personal, professional, it intertwines here, if you will.
Yeah.
It's that acceptance of, okay, so if you're having a professional challenge, it's okay, I accept this is where I am. Okay, now what do I do about it? How can I grow from here? How can I do better? Where do we go? Just
That's why
makes
it's funny. It's interesting when I see anyone I know post on LinkedIn, hey, just want to let you know, I just got let go. Just a general post to their network, which I think, yeah, by the way, was a smart thing to do. I
I
reach out to them as a second within seconds. Yeah, just saw your post. How can I help you? Wanting to hop on a Zoom calls earliest today. And the
I thought
point
that's
there is not that I'm going to get them the next job tomorrow, but the point is when you're by yourself and you've got that challenge of, I just lost my job, and you're sitting in a room, it's so much easier to be able to bounce it off someone, collaborate with someone, strategize with someone, kind of just talk through with someone. If you don't have someone to talk through it, it's really challenging. So when you can, again, and so part of that is just being a good listener. Part of that is offering just help and assistance, and good things will result from it.
that's a gift you're giving them. It's absolutely true. They need that the sounding board during that
We
time
all
too. And it is
all do. Oh,
we all
you know, we're just trying to solve a business challenge. We need other, diversity of thought, diversity of background, diversity of experience. Things will start to click. Light bulbs will go off and things will click. For those who lost, who been laid off and now they're in the search again, it's a big challenge. And so it's to be able to come and help them and collaborate in any way they need, whatever that might be. It's just, you guys are making a connection or two or three at their target company. So
Yeah. I like to remind them that every person I've worked with that has gone through this challenge has found something that has made them immensely happy. There's always the light at the end, but
yeah,
I know that a lot of times that traveling can be very difficult. It doesn't always help
yeah,
in the moment.
yeah. Right. I've said something that a lot lately. I say, I know this is easy for me to say, you're in the position, you're the one waking up every day, not in a role, right? But it will work out. All will be very good. All will turn out very positive. But you are a roller coaster ride right now. You
Yeah,
could be a low day tomorrow, could be a great day the next day, but just keep that positive mindset that it will all win well.
absolutely. And make the most of your time that you can.
Yeah.
So now you've written a lot of books about Gen Z. I mean, clearly you are a bit of an expert, if you will, on the Gen Z in the workplace. I'm curious because I've noticed that when you talk to a lot of people, even if you, for example, when I talk to people in my Thriving After 40 podcast, or if I'm talking to people on this Career One of this podcast, a lot of times the messages, even though these are different conversations, different topics, these messages are often similar. I kind of call them golden threads, right? And I'm curious if you found some golden threads that have popped up through your various books, and if you could share
Yes,
some.
I mean, I've between the Gen Z books and then, the career transition, the win the job and thrive in a multi-generational workplace right now, we're probably going to release another book in a few weeks, just on the exact date, called Conquering Job Transition, in which Frank Kovacs, my co-author on the previous two career books, went out and got 25 folks at different stages in their career to share their story, their career journey, their obstacles, their challenges, and all that. And so we have those 25 contributors that should be coming out hopefully by sometime in early December. Um, but I always get the question about Gen Z, and I think every generation has faced this as millennials arrived at the workplace. Oh, they're lazy, they don't want to work, they're this, they're that. Well, bottom line is, in old generations, we have folks who may be lazy, we have folks who aren't lazy. So I don't mind that argument.
Yeah,
But
I agree, and we all work a little
I
different.
bring out all the time, and I especially say this, I just was asked by I forget about how many CEOs, but a couple of weeks ago, I presented to a bunch of CEOs, all from different industries, about Gen Z. And when I bring up a couple slides, one of the slides very simply says, and I can point at myself as the older generation, by the way, and I'm say older generations, we live to work. We woke up 5, 6, 7 days a week. Actually go to work and you're excited by it. And not only did we do that, we spent all day at work and then we got a nap and we get it again, right? That was the mentality. Gen Z doesn't do that. Gen Z works to live. They work to earn a salary, to experience life, to travel, to pursue their passion, to pursue their side hustle. It may seem like a slight nuance, but it's a major philosophy, a completely different approach. And I think they actually have it right. I don't think we have.
Agree.
I think they have.
Completely agree.
They work to live, not live to work. And then the other is, and again, I didn't come up with these. The other is, Gen Z works smarter, not harder. I do agree with that. I think older generations like us, we probably worked harder, maybe not smarter. So we measured value by how many hours we went into that thing prior to 2020. We called it office. We used to go to this thing. We got on a train or a bus, went to an office, which we don't do as much anymore now. I actually prefer how it works today. Where Gen Z works smarter, not harder. What that means is, they'll say, well, is there technology? Is there a more efficient way to get this done? Is there a way to solve this business challenge and maybe not have to sit here for 14 hours today at the office? And so that's another. So those are kind of threads that have found my way into the different books, both the career books and the Gen Z book. But the other thing too that you brought up, I'll make it real quick, is 2020 was really interesting because not only did we have this incredible transformation in the workplace, right? We went overnight from being in office at least 5 days a week to working remotely from home, right? And no one was trained or taught how to do that. And now here we are 4 years later, 5 years later, and the bulk of those guest speakers come to my classroom. Some are never going to an office, some are going once a week, some are going twice a week. Maybe I've heard of someone going 3 days a week, but that's rare. I haven't heard that too often. So we're not back 5 days a week. But 2020 was also kind of when the oldest Gen Zers were joining the workforce. So there was a convergence of this milestone occurrence of the pandemic happening and transforming the workplace. And all of a sudden, this new generation, the new kid on the block, was just showing up at the same time. And that new kid on the block, the Gen Zer, they never even went into the office, right? They didn't have the traditional orientation. They didn't have the traditional face-to-face meetings. Everything was done by Zoom because there was no office to go into. So it's really interesting when they arrived at the workplace, because it just so happened to be at as the pandemic arrived, or in 2020 and 2021. So really interesting stuff.
That was fascinating and incredibly true. I think it's very interesting, the mindset, right? I think you nailed it. It's the we're smarter, not harder, and I applaud that completely. And I think it's really a generational thing of a belief system, right? Like it was a belief system that was ingrained in people way back then. That
Yes.
in order to be successful, you had to work hard, and that belief system just isn't true. And we've been learning that, and the younger generation knows that to be true.
But
They don't have to learn it because they've grown up knowing that to be true. And
there were a
so
couple headlines that came out recently that I've shared in some of my recent presentations. I put them on the same slide. And I'm not saying someone is right or someone is wrong, but Amazon, the big statement, January 1st, everyone's back in the office 5 days a week. they're going to lose a lot of people.
Yeah, they are. They're
A
gonna
day or
sue.
two later, Spotify, our employees are not children. We will continue WFA work from anywhere. And I love that two completely different companies, two different industries. I get all that, but two different mindsets. And those both came from higher up, like CEO level. And I loved it. And so I share that all the time. And I even share with my students. I say, as you go out and interview for jobs, you need to interview the company, the corporation. What is their policies? What is their culture? What is their approach to remote, hybrid, in-person work? Because I think that's going to be really important for you, as a 22, 23-year-old young executive, and will be important for the next 30, 40 years. And when you pose those two up against each other, that's two completely different philosophies. You must be in here 5 days a week or else you're adults. We know you can get the job done from Spotify. You don't need to come in at all. Keep doing what you're doing. I love that approach.
I can tell you it makes a very big difference in the talent you get as well. Just as an FYI to company.
Well, that's the other thing too is I'm not restricted to the talent that lives within 30, 40, 60, 70 minutes of my office. One of the other, I think, great things that came out of the pandemic, again, in kind of my little world, what we'll call agency world, there are a lot of agencies that went completely remote. They gave up the rent. They gave up the office. And so now I've got an agency that I am familiar with on the West Coast, and they've employed several of my students who live in New Jersey. That never would have happened in 2019 because you had to have lived where the office was in Northern California. Now they can, in essence, the best talent around the country, maybe even around the world, because we're not relying solely on an office building to go.
Yep, it's amazing, and it's one of the great benefits of the pandemic. It proved that this works, and it's proven.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nice, the hybrid. I think the hybrid is a great way. Really, I think the winning companies are going to have hybrid models with the ability to hire remote for the best talent that they want. So they'll have those kind of smaller offices where people can kind of come in and flow and connect, but also offer the remote for the best talent they can find for certain roles. I think that's the winning model at this point in time.
Completely agree with you. Even this one agency I mentioned, and it's not you know, large agency. I don't know how many players listen to that, 50, so it's not huge, but they make a point quarterly that all the employees get together somewhere in this country. So they bring everyone together. And so they're paying for your travel. So to your point, they're fully remote, but they're creating those experiences and those opportunities to collaborate face to face. It goes back to, HI, the idea every once in a while, I do want to collaborate face to face, whether that's once a week, twice a week, or once a quarter, whatever it might be.
Yep.
There's great benefits in that.
Definitely, definitely. So before you go, I'm curious because you mentioned that you love information and you're always consuming information. And this is something I talk about a lot because regardless if we're actively consuming information, I just feel like it's always coming at us and we're being fed information all the time. And I think it's very important that we proactively feed our minds in positive ways. And I'm curious if there's anything that you have read, watched, or listened to that has impacted your life in a positive way that could help others.
I will get specific because I do consume a lot of information, right? I mean, I'm on LinkedIn all day long, just reading thought leadership from, in fact, I just commented on one of my students' posts, and that's a student who's not even in her career yet. And I thought it was tremendous thought leadership. And I said, this is incredibly inspiring. And it was. I just 3-4 weeks ago delivered a TED talk. I delivered a TED talk at TED at State May. But the point of that is I can't get enough of watching TED Talks. Like,
Same.
I can watch just about any TED Talk and it's going to inspire me, inform me in some way. So that's just, for lack of a better word, that's just a genre, I guess, of content, right? Those inspirational, motivational speeches. I'll just put on YouTube and I'll watch one or more and it'll just inspire me. Like it'll just motivate me. It'll get me going. So, that's a source. As I mentioned, it varies for all of us depending on what industry you're in, but I consume easily 12, 14, 15 newsletters a day. I'm a big fan of daily newsletters. So for me, that would be, again, kind of marketing, sponsorship, advertising, Ad Age, Adweek, Sports Business Journal, Morning Consult, who's a research agency, research firm who I love. They just have the greatest 8:30 a.m. newsletter. And I don't know why they got rid of it about a year ago, but it captured everything that happened in the past 24 hours in news, entertainment, sports, sponsorship, marketing, advertising. And it was usually I read a bunch of stuff before I go because I'm usually up at 5, but it was one of my key must read every day. Like my day, once I read that, it felt like, okay, I'm informed. I know what's going on. Interesting campaign from this group, interesting sponsorship here. So it's just consuming, again, depending on the industry you're in, depending on where you work. It's what are those relevant newsletters? What are those relevant trade media that you should read just to keep staying informed. And then I think the all other piece of that is just, as I mentioned earlier, just being kind of culturally relevant. Like you and I may not like the same music, but I just want to be aware of what's trending in music, what's trending in sport, what's happening in movies, films, TV, and all that. So I think, I also think that's kind of really important too. Yesterday, one of my students, I get to class almost an hour before because I just want to be ready and I want to have, and so four of my students were together. So I sat down with them 20 minutes for class. Hey, what's the latest? What's the greatest? I just got tickets for this great concert that's in September. And I said, who? And she gave me a name. I didn't know. And I said, this is why I love teaching. You guys teach me stuff every day that I'm not aware of. I'd never heard of this person in my life, but I said, now I'm going to go on Spotify and I'm going to listen to this artist. Things like that too, just to be, again, culturally aware of what's happening.
I bet those students keep you incredibly culturally.
They do. And I say that all the time. I said it when I delivered the TEDx a couple weeks ago. I said, I teach them about marketing and public relations. They teach me about what's trending, what's relevant, what's happening in pop culture. And I embrace that fully. I want to know all that.
Yeah. Is there anything happening in pop culture we should know about right now? Just learned recently from your students. I'm curious.
Well, I think maybe not pop culture, but I'd say the biggest thing is, this generation, Gen Z, followed by Gen Alpha, they do not consume news and content the way millennials, Xers, boomers did, right? They don't sit in front of this thing we call a TV set. There is no must-see TV. That 8 o'clock tonight are the Grammys. I'm going to sit bit up. No, that's not the. So all I say all the time, especially to media companies and those companies that advertise on major medias, if this is the priority for you, this generation or Gen Alpha will be, you need to really completely, innovate the way you're reaching them and engaging them. So there's brands like Duolingo, which by the way, just love that brand, and Gen Z love that brand, but everything they do is on the channels that Gen Z can do. They make learning language fun across TikTok, across Instagram, across YouTube. They're not running ads on CBS, NBC, and ABC. So I know that's not necessarily trending, but it's just a point of their media consumption is unprecedented. And it's not going to change. They're not also going to wake up on each or third and say, I'm going to watch the 6 o'clock news now. It's just not part of their routine.
Yeah. No, and you have to keep that in mind, especially communications. Public relations marketing. They need to know, and be thinking about that. Yeah. So, I mean, this has been an incredible conversation. So many golden nuggets. Before you go, I'm gonna ask you one final question. I believe that we are all born with certain superpowers, and then I believe that through time we develop superpowers through life. Right. I'm curious, what's a superpower you've developed, and how has it served you in life?
Well, I think to your point, and I say this all the time, and I say it seriously, for the first 30 years of my career, my focus was on things like winning new business, getting new clients, serving those needs, and grow those accounts. So really that word is very selfish, right? It was very just, how do we get more business? How do we grow this? All those things. And so as I transitioned to be a professor, and it wasn't like there was a moment where I drew a line in the sand and said, this is it. But I feel like I went from this focus on what I'll call profit to purpose. And so for now, for the next 30 years, my purpose is to really help not just my students, but, the next generation secure internships, secure that job. In the last 24 hours, I've had Zoom meetings with a student who graduated 2 or 3 years ago and is happy with their job, but they're ready for the next thing. So I'm helping, a graduate student who is about to graduate and doesn't have a job yet, people in different stages of their career. And so my purpose now is how do I leverage all that I've done, my contacts, just everything, and how do I leverage that for the benefit of those who are now, either out of work or graduating in December or May or any of that. So I just call that kind of purpose. And I didn't have that purpose for the first 30 years because again, doing what I was doing for the first few years, it was very focused on, again, AG2 world. Now that I'm teaching and connecting and collaborating daily in classroom with, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 and graduate students, the purpose is now, how can I help you? What can I do to help? How can I help you get from where you are now to where you want to be? And so that's really become the purpose. So I don't know if purpose is a superpower, but I'm making it a superpower.
You love it so much, honestly.
Sure.
I just like, yes, purpose is a superpower because purpose is a key part of having a fulfilling life. And purpose is something that we can all develop over time. It is not something we're born with, but it's something that we can develop and grow. And
Agreed.
each and every person listening can do that for themselves, and it can be their own personal superpower. So thank you for sharing that. I love it.
Oh, thank you for asking. Great question, by the way. I love that question.
Mark, this has been fantastic. Thank you for joining us on the Career Wanderlust podcast.
Thank you, Jelly. I loved it. And again, I love what you're doing with this podcast. I'm inspired when I watch the episode. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us on the Career Wanderlust podcast. If you find value in learning from others, give us a like and subscribe. If you're looking to grow your communications, marketing, public relations, or sales and biz dev team with the best talent and quickly, check us out at paradigmstaffing.com and submit a request. We are wishing you a most successful and fulfilling career. Until next time.